Hi divers, Alec, Peirce Scuba, still in South Africa, having a heck of a time. Look at the sun shining out there. It's about 90 degrees outside, and it's just a beautiful day here in Durban, just north of Durban, South Africa. And today we're going diving. Baited diving is what they call it. They throw a bunch of stuff, shark food, in the water, and the divers jump in and watch the sharks go crazy. No cage this time. We were in Cape Town. Cage diving with the great whites, but not up here. No cage up here. You have to be very careful up here. Anyway, we ran into a little issue today when we walked into the dive store to rent our tanks. This particular dive store uses steel tanks, very, very common, and all throughout Europe and South Africa and other countries too. A little, not quite so common in North America, but they use steel tanks only. And steel tanks, and a lot of you folks who are from Europe, a lot of my subscribers from Europe, thank you very much, know that that's the case. But you measure tanks differently, strangely, in my opinion anyway. It's a little bit odd. Let me explain quickly, and this explanation is for both North American and European, because European, you may not know how we do things in America. But in America, we designate a tank based on the amount of air that it has in it for the diver, you see? So I'll give you an example. The most common tank is what's called the 80 cubic foot tank. 80 cubic feet. 80 cubic feet, that's a lot of air. Take this much, a cubic foot, foot by foot by foot, times 80, that's a lot of air. That's the amount of air that's available for a diver to breathe from the tank. Okay? The amount of air available to breathe. Now, European divers, and here in South Africa, they don't do that. They don't tell you how much air is in the tank. They tell you the size of the tank. So as an example, this is a very common tank. This is a 12-liter tank. And this is a 15-liter tank. Now a liter, as you know, it's like a quart. A liter is not very big, and there's only 12. This holds 12. Well, 12 liters of air is not very much air. That wouldn't last very long. They're not measuring the amount of air. That's the size of the tank, the physical size of the tank. This tank holds 12 liters when it's empty. Well, if it's empty, it doesn't hold anything, but you know what I mean. If you filled this tank with water and dumped it out, it would be 12 liters of water. This would be 15 liters of water. So it's just a different method of measuring the capacity of the tank. In North America, we measure the amount of compressed air at its working pressure. In Europe and here in South Africa, they measure the size of the tank physically. After they've done that, then they fill that size tank with air and off you go. So it's kind of interesting that some of the divers this morning, when we walked in to rent our tanks, and the rental manager said, "Do you want a 12-liter or 15-liter tank?" They were looking, but we got that sorted out. I thought I would take that opportunity to share that with you, and a little bit of more information too, because you know one of the things that you all learn, no matter where you're from, is about the markings on the tank. And it's interesting how the markings on the tank are similar but different. Similar but different. So if you look on one of these tanks as an example, you'll find a lot of the same information we have on our 80 cubic foot aluminum tank at home. So there's the manufacturer's name and the date of the test and so on. However, there's a couple of odd things on here. First of all, it does show the size, the capacity of the tank. So this says 15 liters, the actual size of the tank. That's not so common in North America. So you will not usually find on a tank 80 cubic feet or 50 cubic feet or 40 cubic feet or 100, not quite so common. This actually shows the size of the tank. Now something else that this shows that's interesting is, of course, it shows the working pressure or operating pressure. If you look on a European tank, it'll say OP, operating pressure. That's the pressure to which the tank is filled before you go diving, all right? But it has another pressure on there. Yeah, it has another pressure. That's kind of odd. Why does it have two pressures? Well, the other pressure, which is a higher pressure, I happen to notice, is called TP, test pressure. That's right. Now you probably know, if you have any technical interest at all in this kind of stuff, you know that every tank is tested, usually every 5 years, pressure tested. And they will take your scuba tank and they will put it into a special container and increase the pressure on the tank to a much higher pressure than normal. And then they can measure the expansion, the elasticity of the tank. And that test helps the measurer, the tester, to know whether or not the tank is still safe to use, if the metal has crystallized or hardened or lost its elasticity. Be it steel or aluminum, it doesn't matter. The process is almost identical in both cases. Well, in North America, we always have, of course, the working pressure or operating pressure on there. Somewhere on those numbers it'll say 3,000. And if it's an aluminum 80, they're normally 3,000 psi. So it'll say 3,000 right on there. And that has the same thing on here. On here it says OP 232. And after that it says bar, B-A-R. Because the way that you measure air pressure in Europe is different as well. In North America, we measure PSI, pounds per square inch. So a standard 80 cubic foot tank, which corresponds roughly to this 12-liter tank, is 3,000 pounds per square inch of air. That's the pressure of the air. Here, in the same tank, you would put air into this until the pressure inside measures 232 bar. You can convert, it's very easy. There's a straight conversion. You can use a calculator, roughly 15 PSI for every bar, and work it out. So 232, the pressure in this tank works out to approximately 3364 PSI. Okay, let's recap. Standard aluminum tank in North America is an 80 cubic foot aluminum tank, holds 80 cubic feet of air, breathable air to use at 3,000 PSI. The equivalent tank in Europe would be this one, which they call a 12-liter tank, because the tank itself holds roughly 12 liters of liquid or whatever you put in it, the inside, and it is filled to a pressure of 232 bar, which is equivalent to 3364 psi. Got you really confused now? Anyway, gives you a rough idea. You can check some of these figures yourself and help me a little bit to be sure that they're accurate. Now they also have very, very common a little larger capacity tank. This one, which is a 15-liter. Now 15, this is a 12-liter, that's a 15-liter. That's not a big deal. Actually it is. It is a substantial difference. This is approximately equal to an 80 cubic foot tank, and this should be equal to at least 100 cubic feet, maybe a bit more than that. So it is actually quite a bit more air in this tank. So for folks, the divers that use a lot of air, bigger divers, and they need more air, instead of going to a 100 or a 120 or a 130, you would just go from the standard, more standard, 12-liter tank to the 15-liter tank. You get a lot more air. And it's the same on this. It has an OP, operating pressure, so many bar, and it also has the TP, the test pressure, on there. Now in the United States, American tanks, we know from testing, and I think I've mentioned this in previous videos about hydrostatically testing, they raise the pressure there by 5/3. I know that's an odd number, but if you take 3,000 multiplied by 5/3, 5/3, you come out with approximately 5,000 psi. So they take your aluminum 80 tank, working pressure 3,000 psi, increase it to 5,000 psi in order to check the pressure. Now it's actually surprisingly similar here. So if you take the OP, operating pressure in bar, and the TP, operating pressure in bar, the test pressure in bar, and compare them, you'll find that the test pressure is roughly 5/3 of what the operating pressure is. That's how big it is. It's just a little different that they actually put the test pressure right on you. The test pressure is not information the diver would normally need. You as a scuba diver, you don't need to know the test pressure. You're not going to test your own tank. Even the dive store is not probably going to test your tank. But they do put the test pressure on these tanks. I don't know if it's technical information or information for them from the manufacturer. I'm not sure why. But the European tanks do have the test pressure on there as well. Otherwise, they do the same thing. You put a regulator on, you jump on the water and have a heck of a good time. I did notice over here that almost invariably these tanks are DIN tanks, but you might notice that this one has an insert, so they also use yokes. Many American, Canadian, North American divers come over here and they have their regulator and has a yoke on it. So instead of a DIN opening like this one, they simply put an insert and they turn the same valve into, so it looks like this, so you can put your yoke on it. So that's not a big deal. A lot of divers call and ask me, what should I take if I'm going diving somewhere, my yoke or my DIN? You take whatever you want, because the conversion between the two is very, very simple. And that conversion is usually done right here on the valve. DIN, yoke. I could take that plug out and put it into here, and then it would be DIN, yoke. Very easy to do. Anyway, there's a little bit of technical information in there. I don't know if there's something that you didn't know. There are a couple of things I didn't know either. I studied this morning. I went on to Google and looked at the tables here and looked up some information I have at home to give that to you. But we found it interesting this morning when he asked us if you wanted a 12-liter or 15-liter tank. And I saw the looks on some of our divers. And our divers are pretty experienced. because they had not run into that before. So I thought I'd share it with you. Alec, Peirce, South Africa. Okay, I'm going shark diving. It's noon. The boat leaves at 1 o'clock. I got my gear all ready to go. We're going to see some big sharks. Hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.